Okay, so for recording purposes, this is me again, Dr. Sam, and this is A230A, and this is summer, and this is, I think, our ninth class. And this is also a makeup for the class that we should have had on Sunday, but we didn't. So we're making up for that tonight. Okay, so we're doing Wordsworth. We started off uh, the other day, we spoke about poetry, what poetry is, and what distinguishes poetry from non-poetry, and different types of poetry. And then we moved on and spoke about the time period that we're uh, addressing, which is late 18th century and early 19th century. And this is the time when the Romantics operated. I put the other day, I put that disclaimer, and I said that when I say romantic poetry or romantics, we don't mean, um, people kind of exchanging roses and flowers out of love, and then they eventually get married and live happily ever after. We're talking about the Romantics as a group of radical poets who were not very happy about the state of poetry at the time. Augustan poetry before the Romantics was very rigid and was very strict in terms of rules. So they tried to kind of go against this. And the end result is the poetry that uh, we had a glimpse of when we did the I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. We're uh, going to revisit this poem again and then talk about other poems, and you're going to see how different romantic poetry is from the rest of the poetry that you may have done at school, where there is this measure of rigidity to poetry in terms of rhyme scheme, in terms of rhythm, in terms of consistency, line consistency. They are either long or short, but they can't be both. You'll see this happening with the romantics, where the lines are either, I mean, they can be both, like I said. Okay, it's romantic poetry that we're doing. Let me share what I have. Okay. So I'm not going to revisit everything we said. Of course, you remember that this was the title of the chapter, William Wordsworth, A Poet in a Landscape. And I said that the word landscape is very significant here because it tells us so much about who Wordsworth is and what he stands for. It's nature that he is celebrating in his poetry. And again, we're stressing the fact that it's not trimmed nature, because a garden is part of nature. But obviously, we're not talking about gardens, we're talking about jungles. And the significance here has to do with the idea of freedom, unbridled freedom. So if we have a jungle, it's not molested and it's not messed with by human beings, because there is this sense and this belief that human beings, whenever they put their hands to things, the end result is normally catastrophic and everything in between. So he is a poet of nature, and nature for him means the countryside, very innocent, very pure, mountains, rivers, and singing birds, and it's more or less like a green world or a utopia. Um, so we're exploring how Wordsworth conceived of himself, I mean, as a romantic poet, And then we'll have a number of his poems, ranging from whatever is lyrical to the pastoral to the epic. So lyrical means that he is talking about himself. Pastoral means that there is always this background where we have the countryside, where you have rivers, you have mountains, and epic poetry is that yeah, grand kind of poetry where the style is very high and um, okay, we're going to also talk about how reading through the biography of a poet can make all the difference in terms of appreciating what he or she wrote and everything. Again, this is where he used to live, and obviously from the pictures you can tell that it's nature that he is in the middle. Again, you need to also remember or note perhaps that he was not a country dweller, if you like. He used to live in the city, but again, because of the assault of the Industrial Revolution and what it left behind and what it caused, he decided that he has to go to the countryside and make it uh, his home. And he has this preoccupation. This is something that you're going to find recurring in his poetry. The idea that, yeah, it is true that I now live in the countryside. It is true that I now live among the poor in the countryside and the villagers, but will they accept me? Am I part of them? So he has this feeling of not belonging, no matter how hard he tries, no matter how long he lives there. But you'll find this in his poetry. Again, we're talking about Dove Cottage, which was the home of William Wordsworth, and I mean the place that he chose as home, away from the madding crowds. Again, people now go to this place in order to kind of uh, uh, understand his poetry more. Um, so the popularization of Wordsworth's connection to the Love Cottage through periodical journalism by, I mean, lots of people talk about his home and they started to kind of find links and connections between where he lived and what kind of poetry he wrote, like William Hazlitt and Thomas De Quincey. So Dove Cottage, for those who go to England, is now a museum. Um, this is how we started. This is the daffodils, or I wandered lonely as clouds. We did some reading. We said whenever you read a poem, you approach a poem in two different ways. And actually, the two ways complement and solidify each other. You normally start with the formal aspects of the poem. You look at the rhythm and the rhyme, you look at the imagery and the figures of speech, and then you make the transition to the meaning. Ignoring the formal aspects is obviously not reading or appreciating poetry because poetry is all about those aspects, musicality and feeling or hearing. The music of a poem cannot happen unless you know where to find the rhyme and the rhythm in the poem. So what did we say about I wandered lonely as a cloud? I remember asking you to read it on your own. So did you do that? Did you read I wandered lonely as a cloud on your own? I'm asking everyone. If you know the answer, raise your hand. I mean, if you have something to say, come to the mic and share. Hmm. I wandered lonely as a cloud. Okay, so I want to make sure that you guys can hear me. Raise your hand if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I read it.
Okay. طيب, who else? So Hanin read it. So drop your hand now and let's focus on those who read it. So if you have read it, raise your hands. Because it's not much, it's not big. We're not talking about an epic here. Epic is can be hundreds of lines. So it's a small poem made up of 4 or 5 stanzas, right? Uh, so what does it reflect? Remember, we spent like half the class last time talking about the romantics and their features. So have you detected any of these features in the poem, ya Hanin?
Yes.
Okay. So can you, okay, so can you explain it to us like we're 5? Can you paraphrase the poem for us, for those who haven't read it? And then we go from there.
Okay. Actually, I don't really understand that much of poetry, but what I understood is that as a well, he's writing
Why?
about
Let me ask,
romantic. Yeah.
Hanin, let me stop you. Why? Why do you think you don't understand poetry? Is it because it's not very straightforward? Is it because we have this idea of fronting where you're used to a certain way of or a certain structure on the page and you don't see that? Why?
No,
Why?
in
Why?
general,
And
I'm not
you,
really a
or is
person
it?
of.
Yeah. Because perhaps you're not into poetry, right?
Probably I'm not into
Mm,
poetry, and it's also not also in Arabic. I don't find like it's something that doesn't amuse me, but yani it's interesting how to someone would express themselves, or talk about their situation or their feelings through these rhythms and rhymes of words. It's
mm.
fascinating, but it's not something that that would amuse
That
or make me understand. Like
even
I
in
black
Arabic,
out.
you're
Yeah,
saying that
yeah.
this happens with you even in Arabic. You're not
Yeah,
a
I kind of
poetry
black out in the
lady,
middle.
right?
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. So it's not because it's difficult. I remember what I said the other day that it's highly intellectual, which is very strange. Lots of people say, how come you're saying that's intellectual when it talks about feelings? And it is intellectual in the sense that for a full appreciation of a poem, you need to reorganize it. You need to use your mind. You need to reorganize. Organizing and reorganizing is obviously mental processes, things that you do, mental activities, right?
Yes,
So
that's correct. But the thing is that Wordsworth is, well, I can see that he's a bit of a philosopher, or maybe he's someone deep that he likes to connect to nature. He's spiritual. And these things actually attract me. I like philosophy and I'm into spirituality. But when I read his a poem, if it's something that delves deep inside someone's brain and emotions, it's interesting for me. But when someone talks about things that are more like on the surface, it's not something that it would interest me. But this poem itself was a bit interesting. How he expressed himself, how he was lonely, and the things that are around him made him feel occupied. Is that what he's trying to say? That the things that
is
in
it, did
that
you feel that this is what? This is sometimes you're lonely because you want to be lonely. You're alone. I mean, lonely here does not mean or doesn't have those um, feelings of being isolated, left out. Perhaps it means wanting to be on your own.
yes, عزلة.
Are
يعني
you
he
getting
picked
me?
it. He
Yeah.
picked it.
Yes. Because, yeah, this is actually a feature of the romantic. The fact that they thrive in solitude. They call it solitude in romantic terms, where You are on your own, far from the madding crowd, like Thomas Hardy is saying. You're enjoying nature to the fullest. Nobody is bothering you. And also because you're a poet, very highly individualized being. Poets are unique, and sometimes you cannot even approach them because whether they realize it or not, they think that they are from a different planet. They sometimes we even accuse them of being or living on ivory towers, right? أبراج عاجية, out of touch with reality. Okay, go on. So, is it a story that we can retell? You think it's a story where we have characters, where we have setting, place, time, and place, where we have.
No,
Hmm, not really.
no, it's
And
based. Mm.
it's basic in terms of storytelling. It's basic. Somebody uh, um, out there in nature, and he is obviously engaging with the elements of nature, right? Waves and flowers and moving around. Obviously, he doesn't have an aim in mind. Yeah, carefree, if you like. Um, Again, let's talk about the impression that those elements of nature are leaving on him. Look at, for example, the last stanza, where he is reflecting and recollecting what happened with him during the day when he was out enjoying elements of nature. He was back in his room or house, and he was perhaps lying down on a sofa, and he started to recollect. And this is when he started to write this beautiful poem, right? Okay, so can we consider this like a poem of nature? Is it about nature?
Yes, it is. It is connecting with
Absolutely,
nature.
right. Yes, absolutely. And nature here is not a mere background. It's there. It has it plays a very active role. Had it not been for what he has seen in nature, he wouldn't have been able to produce the poem. Um, so if you have a poem where you have elements of nature like mountains, rivers, what do we call this kind of poetry?
Romantics?
It is romantic
Romanticism?
in a romantic sense, which means we now know what the romantics are all about, whatever is wild, whatever is natural. But there is another word, a more generic word. Okay. If you have a novel, and let me kind of broaden it a little bit. If we're talking about a novel or a poem, where the background is nature, is mountains, is animals, is rivers. What kind of poetry is this? What kind of novels is this? Do we have a name for that? I'll say it in
I'm not sure.
Arabic and
Is
you
it
translate. I'll say it in
okay?
Arabic and you, when I say Ra'awi,
Narrative?
Pastoral poetry.
absolutely pastoral. Yes, pastoral. So pastoral is the word. So this is pastoral poetry. Remember how we started? We said that he's moving from the lyrical self-expression to the pastoral, like having elements of nature in the background, to the epic. Epic means that we're talking about something grand and big and everything in between. Okay, طيب. Um, so it's I wandered lonely as a cloud, and this is the poem. And so if you have a novel is divided into chapters, and the chapters are divided into paragraphs, right? If you have a play, it is divided into acts, and the acts are divided into scenes. If you have a poem is divided into what? What do we call the parts of a poem? How many parts
Stanzas?
can you see? Yes. How many parts can you see?
Four?
Yeah, I can see four. What do we call them? What do we
Stanzas?
call absolutely stanzas? Yeah, so these are stanzas. Okay. Hmm. It's very strange because in some editions you have like four stanzas, in others you have five. Um, what do you think of this? Is it why? Why do sometimes we have four stanzas? And I'm talking about Wordsworth and others. If you have a poem at one point it is a number of stanzas, and at another it is more or less. What does this tell us about the poet? So now, obviously, whatever is missing intentionally. Mhm. So obviously, this is revision. Sometimes you have revisionist poets, poets who go over their poetry and they edit it. And this is what is perhaps Wordsworth is also known for, the fact that he edit himself. And again, what allows him to edit himself is that he lived a very long life. So he had the time to edit himself, which is obviously an opportunity, good or bad, that was not given to other romantic poets, for example. You're going to see Keats as a second generation romantic poet, Shelley, who had who didn't edit themselves. Perhaps they didn't do it because they believe in what they said, and perhaps because they lived or they died very untimely. One of them died at 29 and the other at perhaps 30 or 31. But Wordsworth lived a very long life to the extent that he started to kind of go back on lots of what he said. He was a radical poet like all the romantics. And when I say radical, it means that he was anti-establishment, he was anti-government, he was exposing the corruption of the government, for example, as we're going to see in other, perhaps not with him, we'll see that with Shelley. But towards the end of his life, he started to kind of reconcile. He started to perhaps uh, um, have this kind of peace with the government, if you like. Um, and that's why sometimes you have this editing kind of thing. Anyway, let's just focus on I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. And the title of the poem is I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. And if you look at the title itself is very significant. It can tell you a great deal about the romantic poet. So if you unpack the title, what features do we have of the romantics in the title? I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. What do you think of the I, the persona of the poet? Obviously, we don't see so many eyes with poetry because obviously the poet is hiding behind um, yeah, a different persona, but perhaps the I is very individualistic, typical of the romantic poets. Because remember, we said that the romantic poet or romantic poetry is lyrical. Lyrical means that he talks about himself, he talks about what he feels. So I wondered. This is a very interesting verb. Okay, so obviously, if you're in an office, if you're locked in a small place, you don't wander, right? Wander is moving, loitering around aimlessly, sometimes checking um, the exteriors of a place, lonely as a cloud. And I said the word lonely here is used perhaps in a 19th century sense, meaning independent of others, meaning on your own. It doesn't have this sad associations that we associate with loneliness. So lonely here means on his own. And if you are on your own, it has this sense of solitude. You want to be on your own. Okay? So being in a state of solitude, perhaps that would help you reflect more, contemplate more, enjoy and appreciate the elements of nature more. Okay, so I wandered lonely as a cloud. You know what a cloud is, right? A cloud is what?
Yes.
Obviously, yeah, it's an element of nature, right?
Yeah.
So you're one with nature, okay? You're moving around in nature on your own, and you're imagining yourself a cloud. So total oneness with nature, right? So the title itself can tell you a great deal about uh, um, the attitude that Wordsworth has towards nature. And then we have a number of stanzas, and because, like I said, poetry is highly intellectual, you're going to see uh, an organization of a sort, a plan and a design, if you like. Okay, so I would like you to read the poem again, and I'll give you a couple of minutes for that. And tell me about the progression, if you can feel it, if you can see it, if you can perceive it. What kind of progression? How do we start and how do we end? Okay, I'll give you a couple of minutes for that. Yalla, everyone.
Okay, doctor. Okay.
Mm.
Can I also pray?
Ah,
I'm gonna have to go pray.
but if everybody wants to pray, and if the majority of population are from the MAM, we can all pray and not from the MAM. So if you raise your hand if
Okay.
if we have other people wanting to pray. Right. Let's have can we make it short and sweet يا حنين 5 دقايق 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
طيب 5 minutes and we're meeting again in 5 minutes إن شاء الله. Hello? We're back, huh? We're all back. So can you give me a signal? Raise your hand, perhaps. No, no. Okay, fine. Um, okay, so I was talking about I wandered lonely as a cloud, and I said that even the title is very suggestive of what the poem is all about, where you can see those common romantic elements, the high, the wandering, the solitude, and being, part of nature as a cloud. And then I said that poetry is very intellectual, even though you may not feel it that much, but it is. That's why if you delve deep into the poem, you're going to see those scientific, uh, um, you know, things. When we talk about science, we talk about cause and effect, for example, where obviously one thing leads to another. So when the poet is outside in nature, and then he moves around and he sees the different elements of nature, this is uh, um, that would cause him or push him or lead him to start to write poetry. So this was the motivation for him to write poetry, which is something that we see at the end of the poem. Um, so we're exploring how Wordsworth develops his poetic voice, persona, and project over the cottage. And we're starting, like we said, with I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, which is, yeah, the most famous poem. I mean, as far as Wordsworth poetry is concerned. Um, Again, we're doing a formal analysis of the poem. We're talking about its different aspects, its voice, its diction, its meter and rhythm and rhyme, and the linguistic enhancements when we talk about alliteration and assonance. Okay, so these are things that you need to be on the lookout about every time you analyze a poem. Again, the formal aspects of the daffodils or I wandered lonely as a cloud. So again, if you look here, you're going to see only three stanzas. Are they three? I think they are three or yeah. And again, we're saying because he has this or he had this opportunity to edit himself. Um, Again, in spite of the fact that he said, I wandered lonely as a cloud, we're going to find that there was a witness. He was not, actually, he was not alone. Perhaps he was alone in his solitude, typical of poets. I mean, they don't feel the presence of others if they are so engrossed in a feeling or in an experience. That's why actually, he was not lying when he said that I was alone. In actual fact, he was not alone. He had the company of other people, especially his sister Dorothy, but he didn't feel her presence because he is a poet. And poetry is about individuality, is about feeling on your own. reveling and feeling happy in solitude. So if we talk about the voice of the poem, who the speaker is, the poem is narrated by an unspecified I, which became identified later as the poet himself. And this is obviously uh, um, adding an autobiographical dimension to the whole thing. If you look at the diction, and we said the diction means the words that he is using, it's simple, direct, and of course, very accessible. Accessible means that everybody can understand it, and this is typical of first generation of romantic poets. Their poetry is accessible, unlike the poetry of people before them, like Alexander Pope, for example, where it's not that direct, it's not that simple. Um, so it's iambic tetrameter with an A B rhyme scheme. And of course, the poetic devices that he is using alliteration, assonance, and personification. Again, the poem, like I said, is divided into stages. The first stanza is about the first stage where the speakers, we're talking about the speaker and his experience of seeing the daffodils. Stanza two is the immediate feelings of joy that he had seeing them. And then stanza three is the effect of that, the power of memory in recording the scene. Again, it's highly organized, like I said. So the poem is also lyrical, expressing a single mood or consciousness. Again, reading the poem in a formal way and approaching it in a formal way, focusing on the form, is part of a trend in the early 20th century. It's called neo or new criticism or practical criticism. And the idea here is that the poem can be read without any extra contextual information. Um, Again, people tried it, but at one point they realized that they still need some help reading the biography of the author, reading about the age, and stuff like that. So again, reading a poem biographically, in which you read about the poet and his age, isn't that bad. But of course, we shouldn't overlook, uh, um, the formal aspect. So this poem has been read biographically. Again, and if you look at it biographically, and this is something that you will know about from not from the poem, because the poem wouldn't tell you specifically about the day and the date and the place. These are things that you need to dig for in perhaps the memoir of the poet of his or his autobiography if he has one. Otherwise, you would also rely on other sources, and in this case, we're depending on a journal that Dorothy Wordsworth was keeping. Dorothy happens to be his sister, and we're going to realize that she was on that day she was with him and they were together. Mhm. So details like when it was published and composed, obviously, um, are things that you will go to Dorothy's journal for. From Dorothy's journal, we get to know that it was composed between March 8th, 1804 and April 1807, where at Duff Cottage, and it was published in a collection entitled Poems in two volumes in 1807. Um, so again, there is this biographical element, and until you know a bit about Wordsworth and about what was happening during the time, you wouldn't have a full understanding and a full subsequent appreciation of the poem. So, in composing this poem, Wordsworth used his sister's account of the original experience as an aid to his marriage. So, to the extent that, remember, we said that she was there and he is denying that. He's saying, lonely. I wandered lonely as a cloud. Again, whether obviously he wasn't lying because he is a poet who feels that in nature he separates and divorces himself from everything around him. But we got to know, we took his word for it momentarily, believing that he was on his own until we read his sister's journal or diary, and we found an entry on this, event. And again, when we delved deep, we got to know that he even depended on her account to kind of remind of himself of what happened, and then he came up with this beautiful poem.
Yeah, he was walking alone with his sister, or that he was lonely, he was walking by himself.
No, he was. They were together,
But
and
probably he was
perhaps
describing
there.
the feelings he was in. He was
Yes.
lonely even if she existed, even if she was
Again,
there.
it's okay. So let's agree on the meaning of the word lonely. Lonely here means on his own, right? Uh, yeah, as a poet, he felt that he was alone. Again, because he was engrossed and immersed in the experience. He didn't perhaps feel that people were around. And again, this is not lying. This is what a poet feels normally. And we took his word for it. We accepted the fact that he was on his own. Okay. But over time, we came to realize that no, he wasn't alone. His sister is talking about the self same experience. Okay. But what's the difference between a diary entry and a poem? So a diary entry or a journal, let me ask you about this. Do you keep a journal, I'm sorry,
Yes.
and the age of it can be like a journal, a diary, and it can be a web blog. Now we have online journals, right? So those who keep a journal or a diary, raise your hand, because I'll build on that. Okay, Haneen, who else? Right. Um, let's talk about the experience of writing, like a journal or a diary. When you write, now, of course, if it is online, so you're writing the entries for people to see, right? So do you have an online journal or is it a diary that you keep to yourself, yeah, Haneen?
I actually have both.
Okay, but you started off with the private one, the
The
diary,
journal,
right?
yeah.
Okay. So what is
They're actually
let's
different.
yeah, because now if you're going to reveal something to whoever is reading, obviously the experience is going to be different. Whatever you're writing here is different from whatever you're writing there, right? There are things that you keep to yourself, and this is meant for the diary, the private one, right? But if you
Yes.
would like to share something with people, let's focus on the diary. What is what um What are the features or what are the characteristics of like diary? Why do people keep diaries?
Well, it depends. If you're going to write on a daily basis a journal about your day, you would set the date, and you would say write the day, and then you would write your what you have to like keep as a memory, or write down how you felt about something specific. But
Mm,
if it was something, for example, on a phone, it would be like a reminder on what would I would do on another specific, like for example, if I had an exam, or I had something, an appointment I have, it's like a journal. But the one on I have on a paper, or on my notebook, is on my daily stuff. I write my memories. I write the things that I wanted to experience. Some things that, like just like you said, something's private for myself.
mm.
But then the
So
one on the
private, you're
phone,
saying
yeah,
private that you wouldn't share with other people, right? And
yes,
this is
yes, I
typical
wouldn't.
of diaries for the most part, right? You don't
Yeah, thoughts
share
and and
with
and things. Yeah,
yes, reflecting on things. Why Dr. Sameh is behaving the way he does tonight, for
exactly.
example. So the word private is key, right? Uh, let's shift gears and move to poems. So, do poets write poetry for themselves? Why? Why do we say that they are poems? That he wrote this or that poem? Because he did what? He kept it to himself?
No, he shared it.
No. He shares because poets wants to be poets, wants people to say something about their poems. So writing poetry is a public act, right? While writing an entry in a diary is a very private. Would it make a difference? And we're not very far off, mind you, when it comes to women and men and gender roles, right? So, do you think it would make a difference if the journal or the diary is written by a woman and if it is written by a man?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, it is. So if let's make it even bigger. If you have a poem written by a male poet, and if you have um, a journal written by a woman in the 19th century, who is going to perhaps more pronounced, more perhaps daring him in his or her views, who is going to be perhaps more outspoken, more comfortable in his or her own skin. The
I
lady who
believe
is
at that
keeping the
period it's the
diary,
male.
yes, the poet, right? Yes, this is what
Yes.
is happening. If we're making this comparison between Dorothy's entry about the yani, whatever happened on that day and the poem of Wordsworth. He's a public figure. He is male. Um, he is writing a poem that is meant to be published. She's writing I mean, an entry in a diary that was perhaps meant to for her to go back to and perhaps remember, but she never meant for it to perhaps be published, right? And this is typical of diaries in general. Okay, so this is the entry. It's April 15th, 1802, from the journal written at Grasmere by Dorothy Wordsworth. So this is what she actually wrote. These are her own words. It was a threatening, misty morning, but mild. We set off. I would like you to read it on your own. Read it. It wouldn't be a waste of time. Read it and remember that this is a diary. And perhaps compare this prose to the poem, because obviously the poem and this diary entry are about the self same thing, wandering in nature, looking at its different elements. Yalla. Read this and start to make those comparisons. Yalla, I'll give you a couple of minutes. Hmm. Hmm. So, how's the experience now that you have read the poem and now you're reading the diary entry by Dorothy Wordsworth? How different?
The
Hmm.
structure is different.
Only
Those
the
are the words.
structure,
No,
not the feeling, not the, yeah,
there's more than one يعني difference. There's
yes.
a lot.
Tell us
Mhm.
about them. Yeah. And I normally
هيا.
find difficulty
It's
pronouncing
okay.
your
It's
name.
okay.
You need shadda fatha, by the way, on
Yes.
yes, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
okay. Hmm. Go
So
ahead,
in the
Yamails.
okay, in the journal, the words were straightforward, clear. The language was clear. It is more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
While in the poetry, they uses so much of metaphors, and they are the artistic and symbolic. There's like imaginary
Mm-hmm.
um, sense in the poetry. While in the journal, they're like describing a something daily events or thoughts.
Perhaps, yeah, this is what distinguishes poetry from non-poetry. It's even we say it that when I say that something is prosaic, prosaic means عادي مش جميل يعني.
Yes.
Prosaic existence or prosaic life, for example. And this is exactly what Dorothy is saying, like you said, uh, she's very realistic, except for her appreciation for the daffodils. Everything else is bad. You have storms, right? You have, I mean, the place is obviously messy. They find it difficult to negotiate their way through. Even the people that they meet are not very happy, right? Remember
So
when she
basically,
described
he's
the
more
woman?
optimistic, and she's a pessimist. He's an
Uh,
optimist.
I wouldn't say that he was pessimistic and he was optimistic. And I'm saying that because he is a poet and he is a romantic one, he finds himself in nature. That's why he he
Yes.
doesn't feel cold, for example, like she did. She said that there were storms and the place is perhaps muddy. No, he was focused on those beautiful elements of nature. He sees nothing but beauty in them. The waves,
Yeah.
the um, again, she is very prosaic. She provides a context. Okay, context means that we know the time, we know where they were, right? We even
Yes.
know that they had other people, right? So they were not alone. Um, let's move on. So how do the two accounts tally or differ? And what difference does reading the journal entry make to your understanding of the poem? So if we talk about the similarities, we talk about both accounts refer to the same experience, which is seeing a mass of daffodils, and both tend to think of the daffodils as behaving like people, in describing them as dancing, as being gay and very happy. And the differences are many. The differences are more than the similarities. The journal, for example, is full of everyday detail, like Maya said, information and observation, which is not evidently ranked by importance. Again, the description of seeing the daffodils begins as botanical. Botanical means it's from the field of botany اللي هو يعني كأنك في معمل كأنك في إيه في حصة إيه زراعة أو كده. Botanical observation before changing into a description of a personal sphere. So it has nothing to do with feelings. It has nothing to do with how you react to what you're seeing. So while Dorothy describes this as a shared experience, the poem foregrounds a romantic eye who wanders alone and disconnected. The experience Dorothy recounts is changed in a poem to the stored up wealth that the poet repeatedly realizes through being able to re- reviving something, the scene through memory. So again, let's talk about the effect of reading the poem with the journal in the background giving us details. So the journal certifies the poem as true, right? You would go to the poem to confirm what happened. It invalidates the claim to immediacy and memorability. Again, you can tell, no, I mean, obviously, he said lots of things that are not um literally true. And then the idea of him being alone. Um, Wordsworth seems to have needed to be reminded of this experience when he came to draft the poem, at least 2 years after the journal entry was made. So the comparison with the journal entry throws into sharp relief what are probably the two most important and most Wordsworthian things about the poem. So, two things that are highly Wordsworthian and romantic about the poem. The first thing is its interest in dramatizing the figure of the poet and its interest in the workings and solace of memory as a foundation of identity. And at the same time, the comparison shows that the figure of the solitary poet genius is a fiction. Solitary means, again, alone. The making of the poem was, in fact, a collaborative experience or enterprise because he wasn't alone, like I said. And he needed his sister to be reminded of what happened. So it's not a work of genius like the poet is promoting and is propagating. No, it was collaborative because he needed her entry on that day. So, in comparing these two pieces of writing, it is important to remember that they are acts of crafted writing. And obviously, the difference lies in the fact that there are two forms of writing. One of them is private writing by a woman living at the turn of the 19th century, and the other is public and written by a conscious and ambitious self-inscribing romantic male poet. And obviously, a huge difference. Again, you would need to look at the genre. Poetry is obviously different from diary writing. You would need to also look at the fact that the poet is a male. He's also romantic, and you need to know that the writer of the diary is female, and she's writing prose. Again, we spoke about the context. The context means the time and the place and what used to happen. Again, you would tell about perhaps any private things about the poet and his life, about his family and all of that. So, reading Dorothy's journal alongside the poem seems one way of getting very close to the poet himself. So, obviously, we have the same experience, and the same experience informs both the journal and the poem. Um, Again, one of them is very realistic, and the other is giving us the opportunity to see the imagination at work. So the most, or the biggest difference is that a stanza appears to be missing. Remember what I said that we have yesterday when we did the poem, it was like five stanzas, and today they are three or four, right? Again, it's about those significant revisions that Wordsworth was doing, again, because of the fact that he started off his life as being very radical, but over time he started to uh, kind of reconsider his stances, and again, it also refers to the idea of the poets being restless, not always happy with their creations. That's why from time to time they effect changes. So I wondered lonely as a cloud is not the simple act of autobiographical recollection. Uh, uh, it's not also the simple act of recollecting multiple acts of recollection. It's a collaborative work. Again, what is again Wordsworthian about the poem, where we see the poet as being presented as solitary. We have an imaginatively intense experience. We have a natural landscape, and all of that would result in profound and permanent, unquantifiable spiritual benefit to the poet's inner life and possibly to us as readers. So it's autobiographical, it is philosophical, and it is a generalizable statement of the value of recollecting natural landscape within urban modernity. Again, it has this therapeutic uh, uh, and edifying influence. The fact that coming close to nature can be edifying. It can teach you lessons. It can help you heal and cure. And then we move to another poem, which is Point Trash Judgment. Let me check what time it is and see whether we will have time to. Okay. Yeah, we're recording the class. Somebody's asking if we can record the class, of course. Um, so we're moving to Point Rash Judgment, which is another poem. Uh, and I don't know whether I have the poem handy. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to ask perhaps ChatGPT for the poem. And I would like you to do the same thing. If you're using any AI model, ask for the poem and press the link and start reading it. Okay, we're going to read it, and we're going to first of all come back to me and tell me that you have found the poem. Okay, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do next. Okay, everyone, we're doing Point Trash Judgment.
Okay.
Point Trash Judgment by Wordsworth. Let me check it. I think I have Copilot. It's very strange. It tells me that there is no such thing as poor trash judgment. Did did your search yield any result? Did you find it? I was using
Yes.
Gemini. Let me now. What are you using, Iran?
I use the Chat GPT app.
Okay, and what did it say? Did you find the poem?
Here, yes.
Good. Okay. Who else is using? So did we all find it? Rania, can you share it in the chat?
Okay. Wait.
So can you see it, Rama? Rania shared it on the chat.
Doctor, I actually when I see the answer from ChatGPT, when
Hmm.
the machine answered to me that it's by ChatGPT, I actually don't get it. What is this poem actually about?
You mean, what do you mean?
I mean, see this right. The title is "Point of Rash Judgment," but
Mhm.
why does ChatGPT tell me that it's by ChatGPT? Is it a genre of poem or what is it?
You mean perhaps ChatGPT came up with one? ChatGPT is the
Yes,
poet? It
yes,
depends
because it's
on,
telling
let
me
me,
so.
I know the poem, but I can tell whether it's by ChatGPT or by, uh, what's his name? Let me see. I'm starting to doubt it. Can somebody help us? Did you find the poem, Agama? Other people? Like if we go to Google, we'll find it because I used to retrieve it from Google before AI. So let me try Google, this primitive search engine, and let's see what will come out. So point dash research. Yeah, perhaps I mean he wasn't too mistaken when he couldn't identify it because it's part of a long poem or volume of poems. Um, Okay. So let me show you what I found. So this is the poem. Okay. I wanted you to kind of read it for yourself. I don't know whether it would be. Oh, try to read it. And you don't have to understand everything. Again, this is poetry, and poetry does not lend itself to easy interpretation, I know. But at least get a sense of what is happening. Yalla, read it from my screen, and I'll give you 4 minutes. And it's a little bit long, so you need to tell me that you have finished so that I can scroll further. Okay, yalla, let's read it. Perhaps to help you also, I would like you to ask yourself questions like, is it a romantic poem with all what we know about romantic poetry, nature, simple language, different elements of nature, the poet talking about himself, self-expression, and all those kinds of things. Yalla, go ahead. Again, you don't have to understand everything. This is poetry, and poetry, I know, it's challenging, but at least you can gather something. You can come up with a meaning, and it doesn't have to be the right one. Guesswork is very important when it comes to poetry. So let's talk about it. Whatever you understood, and again, I'm not expecting much. Do we have people in the poem? One, one individual or more? Where are we? Are we in the city or in the countryside? Is it pastoral? Hmm. I'm trying to help you. Hmm. What do you think? Hello.
It it is perhaps a small town.
Okay.
I mean, it's a poem about uh, a small town, where this poem is created in a pastoral style.
So, I mean, the word town and the word pastoral are kind of contradictory. Unless you, by town, you mean village, or unless you're
Yes, and that.
perhaps, uh, yeah. So you're right in saying that I mean, the background is pastoral. We are in outside nature, perhaps in the countryside, right? That's why it's pastoral, because we have fields, we have people harvesting, right? We have elements of nature. People are enjoying that, right? We have a lake and somebody is fishing. This is all pastoral, Yaranya, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah. What's happening? So people, we have people, right? Do we have only one person or a number of persons? I'm asking. Okay. So obviously you're tired. Right. I would like you to read the poem and read it very thoroughly, because it's a nice one. You're going to like it if you understand it. And when we meet again, we can kind of dissect it and talk about it more, inshallah. We're meeting before the quiz, because the quiz is on Monday, right? But let me tell you about the quiz. The quiz is going to only cover Wordsworth. I mean, it's going to be basically about what we have taken so far. What is it that I'm expecting from you? You're going to have like two choices, two essay questions, and you're going to choose to write on one of them in not less than 200 words. It's an hour exam. It's going to take 1 hour. Um, yeah, this is basically it. It's going to take
Doctor,
an
may I
hour.
know what's the name of the previous poem?
I wandered lonely as a cloud. The daffodils,
The
Yaran.
one just now, the very long one?
This one,
Yes.
the other one, it was short. It was like 4 or 5 stanzas. No, it's not long. I wandered lonely as a cloud. Now we've been talking about it for the past 2 days. The other day and today, Yarani. And you just came or what? You didn't attend with
No,
us?
sorry, doctor.
Hmm.
I meant about the poem that you looked up on the internet, the one that you scrolled up to the
Yeah, it's
bottom.
called, yeah, Point Trash Judgment. This is the poem. Let me see if I have it again. So this is the one. Let me share the link of the poem and you open it on your own, and I'll put it in the chat. Uh, You see that? Okay, good. Right. Like I said, we're going to stop on this note and with this item, and I'll see you again on Sunday, inshallah. Yalla, assalamu
وعليكم السلام. شكرا.
alaikum.